Well, hi, and thanks for stopping by the Pellets and Pistons Airgun channel. I know I'm not where I'm usually at. I'm not sitting at my bench today. I'm found a place in the shade because the wind is blowing like crazy and I can't use my umbrella. So instead I found another place in the shade, and that's why I'm not where I usually am when I make one of these videos for you guys. But here today we're going to talk about my friend's Diana Model 460 air rifle. This is a 460 Magnum. It's producing somewhere around 20 foot-pounds of energy when it's doing what it should. But this gun's not doing what it should. It's only getting somewhere between, say, 13 foot-pounds down to 11 foot-pounds, and it's been very, very inconsistent. The velocities are ranging all over the place when it's being shot. So he's not sure what's going on. He asked me to take a look at it, so I agreed to do it. I usually don't work on other people's guns, but today we're going to make an exception. We're going to see what's going on for my friend. So we're going to put it on the bench and tear it down and see if we can't figure out what's happening with this rifle. So stick around. This ought to be fun, and thanks again for stopping by the Pellets and Pistons Airgun channel. Okay, so the first step, of course, is to remove the stock. What I'm doing here is I'm just testing the mainspring. I'm prying on it a little bit with a screwdriver in order to see how much tension is on it. This way I can gauge whether or not I need to use a spring compressor or not in order to disassemble the rifle. In this instance, I decided that I don't need one, so we're going to go ahead and take it apart right at the bench. There's two pins at the rear of the receiver. You need to knock out both pins. Knock the first one out, no problem, but when you take the second one out, you want to leave the punch in place, because when you remove that punch, it's going to free up the mainspring as well as the trigger group, which will fly out of the gun with a lot of force. So you need to restrain the mainspring as you remove that punch, as I'm doing right here. I'm pushing down on the receiver and I pull the punch, and now I can slowly relieve the pressure off the mainspring. From there, the trigger group will come out, as well as the spring guide and mainspring. Next, we're going to go ahead and remove the piston. I'm pushing it to the rear by actuating the cocking lever. Oops. While I was working on the gun, this fell out of the action. I'm not exactly sure where it was, but I have an idea, because I found a lot of pellet lead jammed up into the forward end of the breech. You can see it here on the face of the compression chamber. You also noticed a missing spring for the underlever assembly. So we're going to go ahead and take the cocking lever off the rifle. This is quite a procedure. The first thing you do is knock out a pin, but in order to get the cocking arm out of the compression chamber, you have to remove a small Allen screw that's in the face of that compression chamber, just below the breech seal. Now that screw is in a very awkward position. It takes a while to take it out. I'll give you a little better detailed look of how it looks when I put the rifle back together again, but suffice to say, it's going to take you a little time, because it's a real fumbly kind of system as far as how to get that out of there. But at any rate, once you've removed the cocking arm, the compression chamber will slide right out, or the cylinder will slide right out of the action. And so here's how that screw goes in, and that holds the cocking link in place on the compression tube. So now we're just going to clean everything up with some isopropyl alcohol. We're going to wipe down the piston. We'll clean inside the compression chamber as well as the receiver tube. Now, getting back to that lead that we found all jammed up into the forward end of the cylinder, that poses a big problem, and it's probably going to explain most of the inconsistency in velocity as well as the drop in velocity that my friend was experiencing with this rifle. When you have that much lead up in the forward end of the cylinder, or the receiver I should say, when you close the cylinder so that the breech seal will mate up with the end of the barrel, if there's lead that's causing it not to be able to close all the way, you're going to lose some pressure at that point because your breech seal is not going to seal properly. So you're going to lose velocity, you're going to have inconsistent results, and you're going to have a problem damaging your rifle over a long period of time because that piston is slamming home a lot harder than it should be because it doesn't have as much of a cushion from the pellet as resistance. So at any rate, taking that lead out of there is probably the biggest thing we did as far as helping to get this rifle shooting back up to spec. So the lesson to be learned here is that should you drop a pellet into the action, into the loading area of the action, be sure to remove it before you close the action, otherwise the pellet will get mashed up into the forward end and you'll never even realize what you did. Now that everything's clean, we can go ahead and start replacing parts. The first piece I'm going to replace is the breech seal, which is down inside this recess. And just pull it out with a pick. We'll clean out that recess a little bit. Here's the new breech seal. We're going to go ahead and put that in place. It's a tight fit, so it takes a little force to get it to seat. I'll use the bench to get it flush, and then from there I'll use my screwdriver handle in order to finish it. There's no tip in the screwdriver, so it's just a nice rounded edge to push that breech seal home. And there it is, fully seated and ready to go. Next we'll work on the piston seal. I'm going to attempt to try to put the new one on cold. Sometimes this works, sometimes it doesn't. This one's going to prove to be a bugger. So we're going to resort to the old trick of using some very, very hot water. What I do is I heat the water up to boiling in a microwave, and then I'll take the piston and the piston seal and submerge them in that water. Once it's stopped boiling, I'll wait for it to get up to temperature, and then the seal is a lot more pliable and it's not so difficult to get it to snap into place on the forward end of the piston. My friend asked me to install some buttons on the piston. Now this is the first time I've done this. He supplied the materials, the glue-on buttons from ARH, or Air Rifle Headquarters. These are what they call the old school buttons. They don't require any machining work, and according to Jim, what he's written up about these things, they last and last and last. So I have my doubts about them, but my friend asked me to install them, so I thought we'd go ahead and do it. So that's what we're going to do here. What I'm doing now is just roughing up the metal surface so that the adhesive will have something to stick to. I'll go ahead and degrease that whole area again with isopropyl alcohol, 91% isopropyl alcohol. We want to be sure that the area is clean and free of any oils or greases. Now these are the buttons, and what I'm going to do is attempt to degrease the bottom where they contact the piston with a little more isopropyl alcohol and a Q-tip. So I'm just wiping them off with a little bit of alcohol to be sure that they're grease and oil free. Next we're going to use a very good grade of super glue, and apply just a very small amount to the entire surface of the underside of the button. And we're going to affix that in place at the rear bearing surface of the piston. This is the raised portion of the piston that usually comes in contact with the cylinder walls. The idea here is to eliminate metal-to-metal contact so that the buttons are the only thing that make contact as the piston slides forward and rearward. We're going to index these. We're going to apply 3 buttons. We want to be sure not to line the button up with the slot on the piston if the piston is slotted. In this case it is not, so we don't have to be too concerned. We just want to get them evenly spaced. Some people use more. Here I'm dry fitting to make sure that the buttons will fit within the receiver, and it looks like they're going to be a little bit tight. So we're going to go ahead and just sand them down just a little bit until the fit is just right. Another dry fit, and it looks like we've got it perfect. We're going to apply a little bit of moly paste to the edges of the piston seal, and then we'll also moly those buttons so that they have a little bit of lubrication. So we assemble the compression sleeve along with the piston, and this whole assembly will be inserted back into the rifle when the time comes. Now, the cocking arm gets inserted into the bottom of that compression cylinder, and then the set screw is put in from the face of the cylinder. It engages with a hole in the cocking arm, and that's what holds it into place. I hope that makes sense. I didn't really get a good shot of that on video, but this is how you have to thread it, thread that Allen screw in or out of the gun. So it's a kind of a tedious, painstaking task to get that assembly back together. But once you do, then the cocking arm is attached to the compression cylinder so that the gun can be cocked in the proper fashion. Next, we'll replace the pivot pin. A little moly on that as well. Now my friend supplied a spring with the rifle. He thought it was a new spring, but it turns out it was not. It was a used spring, and it was in worse condition than the original spring. So here I'm removing it from the package. However, you may or may not notice that it's got quite a bit of cant to it. There's a lot of twists and turns. That spring is not nice and straight. So we're going to go ahead and use the original spring, which looked a lot better. A little moly on the bearing washer, which goes on the spring guide before the spring goes on the guide. We'll put some moly on both sides of that washer. And then we'll slip it over the spring guide. Next, we'll apply a little bit of clear spring tar to the mainspring. This was at the request of my friend. This should help to cancel some vibration as well as provide some lubricant for that spring. Here I'll reinsert the spring and the spring guide back inside the rifle. Next, we'll need the trigger group. We'll insert that behind the spring guide. And then we're going to apply that downward pressure again and try to line up the holes to get one of the pins started. These are the retaining springs that keep the tension on the mainspring, so we need to compress the spring as we find that hole for the pin. Once the pins have been started, that'll hold the trigger group in place and keep the mainspring under tension. And then you can finish the job by just tapping those home. It doesn't hurt to keep applying pressure to the rear of the gun as you tap those into place. Once one is in, the other should go in relatively easily. So now we'll address that missing spring. I looked around in my spring drawer and I found just the right size, so I replaced the spring, and now the gun should function properly. We'll wipe it down, put it back in the stock, and then we're ready to run some tests and see how we did. Okay, so we've completed the repairs on the RWS Diana Model 460 Magnum air rifle, and we're going to go ahead and see if we can't ring that bell for you. Now, I got a confession to make. This is not my friend's rifle. This is my rifle. We did the work on his on a real rainy day, and I couldn't do any filming. I couldn't run it over the chronograph for you so that you could see the results. So instead, I'm just going to put them up here for you now, and we're going to go ahead and ring that bell and celebrate a job well done. Now, I already went ahead and loaded a pellet just in the hopes of saving a little time, so you won't see me load a pellet, but I am going to cock the rifle because I uncocked it before I started the video. So we're just going to bring it down and see if we can't make a shot. Now, I'm going to confess to you guys, I have not been shooting my best lately. I can't seem to hit the right side of a barn door. It's been going on for about 2 weeks. I hope it's only temporary because it's driving me crazy. But we're going to make this shot now. Normally I'm at 60 yards sitting at the bench. Now I'm at 70 yards standing over here. So it's going to be that much more difficult, and I'm going to try to do it offhand. So wish me luck. I'm going to need it. All right. So here's the way we celebrate on the Pellets and Pistons Airgun channel. Oh yeah, that rang it nice and loud, didn't it? So I want to thank you folks again for stopping by the Pellets and Pistons Airgun channel. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe. Hit the bell if you'd like to be reminded of future videos, and by all means, give me a thumbs up if you enjoyed this one. Thanks again, folks, and have a great day.